Pretty much all software today is built on open source. So you have open source components that are critical to being able to rapidly develop your software. And the more you rely on open source, the more important it becomes that you are part of those communities, that you are able to understand how the software is developed, the release cycle, the security processes, the overall philosophy behind those different projects. And of course, as you find issues, you contribute them back, you fix the software, you make it better, you become a good citizen of these communities. And as this process goes on in a company, at some point you have to ask yourself, what's the strategic value of what I'm doing here? Why am I doing this? And typically that is the catalyst question that gets a company to create an open source program office. Because you really want to be able to clearly articulate which software is important, which open source components are important, how are you helping to sustain them, to make them better, to make them continue to be supported and be around, and how can you possibly influence the direction to better serve your needs. And as you think through these questions and as you think through your engagement with those projects, creation of an open source program office is typically a very natural answer to that. But one of the things that I always find interesting is that a lot of people seem to assume that just because you use an open source component, that is something that you need to engage in. Whereas very often you have to ask yourself the question, what's strategic for me? Where does my company create the differentiation? Where do we create the value? Which means, where do we want to invest? Where do we want to build expertise? So we go to so many events where everyone is super excited about Kubernetes. Obviously, VMware is a big contributor and a very strong promoter of Kubernetes. But to us, that is a strategic part of what we do. We provide the software that allows you to orchestrate your workloads, and Kubernetes is one of the ways to do that. But if you look at the case of an end user, the question is an investment in Kubernetes, in the expertise of Kubernetes development, really the right investment for them? Or isn't the value that they want to create higher up in the stack closer to the custom applications they write for their business processes? And that's this trade-off. Open source is not equal Kubernetes. 10 years ago, everyone you talked to about open source thought you were talking about Linux. 5 years ago, everyone was talking about OpenStack. Today, everyone's talking about Kubernetes. Yet open source is so much more. It's such a tremendously broad term with millions of projects and so many different ways to engage. And this is where a dedicated office that focuses on what do we do, why do we do it, how do we do it, that is a clear value for you as a company.